How to play fingerstyle or fingerpicking guitar, Book 2, Lesson 6. Etude by Francisco Tarrega. If you're unfamiliar with this tune and would like to listen to it a few times, I've put a link down below in the description to me playing it 2 or 3 times, so you can watch that first before starting or continuing on with this lesson. And if you need the tablature for this lesson, you can get all the tablature for Book 1 and Book 2 of the Fingerstyle Guitar course completely free at www.ebooks4guitar.com. Otherwise, let's get on with the lesson. How to play Etude, which means study or exercise, by Francisco Tarrega. Firstly then, let's take a look at the fingerpicking pattern. And slightly unusually for a classical piece, it's got a pattern that repeats throughout the tune. And that pattern is primary, index, middle, annular, middle, index, annular, middle, index, annular, middle, index. Here that is being played 4 times, just open strings, no chord. Before you attempt to play that with a backing or playing along with me, I need to explain how the rhythm works. And you'll notice there's 12 notes in each bar, but the tune is 4/4 time. And this is because each set of 3 is what's called a triplet. And there's 4 sets of 3 in each bar. You can see how it's broken into 3s just by looking at the fingerpicking pattern, because we got 1 set of 3 PIM, but then AMI, AMI, and AMI again. So to make it easier to play along with, I've created a simple drum pattern. And firstly, we have the 4 beats of the bar. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And to make it easier to play the triplets, I've incorporated a hi-hat on the triplet beats. 1 2 3 2 2 3 3 2 3 4 2 3 1 2 3 2 2 3 3 2 3 4 2 3 1 2 3 2 2 3 3 2 3 4 2 3. Here's what it sounds like when you play the finger picking pattern with those drums. And I'll be playing just open strings, no chord, with a 2-bar introduction, and it's at a slow 90 beats per minute. I'll play that finger picking pattern again now, 4 times with the open strings and with a 2-bar introduction, in case you want to try and play along with me. Right, let's take a look at the first line. And you'll notice above each bar are 3 forward arrows. And these are accents, which mean those notes should be slightly louder than the rest. Or you just play these notes a little harder. If you've never seen these before, don't worry about it. You could have a bash here, but we'll look at them in more detail in a few weeks' time. At the end of the first line, you'll notice the word simile, and this really means to copy what you're doing on the first line, and this is in reference to the accents, so they continue through the whole piece. Something that makes the first couple of lines easier to learn is the fact that you repeat the first bar, so you play that twice for the first line, and again in the last bar of the second line. Another thing about the first bar or the first line is that it gives the feel for the whole tune. So it's worth practicing the first line a few times, or at least till you're fairly comfortable with it. Here's what the first line sounds like being played at 90 beats per minute. Hopefully you notice that the first line is basically just a C chord, but you add a G in the top E string, or the 3rd fret of the top E string, at the beginning of the 3rd triplet. And you're using your 4th finger to add that note. Here's the first line again, at 90 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. Try and play along if you think you're ready. Here that is again, being played at 90 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction, but this time we'll repeat the line. So by the time we move on, you've got a really good idea of the finger picking pattern. Here's the first line again, but this time at 100 beats per minute. And we'll play it with the repeat and with a 2-bar introduction, in case you want to try and play along. Now you can play bars 1, 2 and 4. Let's take a look at bar 3. This bar is easier than it looks, and it repeats in the last line of the tune. If you do have difficulty with this bar, I would suggest breaking it down into 3 sections and learning each section and then bring them together slowly until you're happy with it. If you can, I'd recommend you keep the first finger in place on the 3rd fret of the bottom E string. And the reason for this is that you want the bass to ring through as long as possible. Obviously, for the last 3 notes, you have to have moved the first finger. Here's what that bar looks like being played, just showing the fingering hand. And we start with the first finger on the 3rd fret of the bottom E string and the 4th finger on the 5th fret of the top E string. Then we move to the 2nd finger on the 3rd fret of the top E string without removing the first finger. And then we remove the first finger to play the 1st fret on the top E string. Here's that bar being played showing both hands at 90 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. Here that is again, in case you want to try and play along with me. Let's try and bring what you've learnt so far together and play the first 2 lines. But first, listen to how it sounds. Here's the first 2 lines being played at 90 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. You might need to pause the video here and just practice that for a while. But if you're ready to go on, here that is again at 90 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction, in case you want to try and play along. Here that is again, one last time at 90 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction, in case you want to play along with it. Finally, for this section, let's see if you could play it at 100 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. Before we move on, I'll just recap what the Roman numerals are. And these are the finger positions. And you'd find them far more important if you were learning to read music, because you wouldn't know what frets you should be in. However, when reading tablature, it tells you what frets you should be playing in. But the Roman numerals are still useful. So, for example, looking at bar 3, the Roman numeral is a 3, and it tells us to play the 3rd fret with the 1st finger. And if we looked at bar 6, the Roman numeral is a V, which is a 5, so it's telling us to play the 5th fret with the 1st finger. So you can see the Roman numerals are an important guide to tell you where your hand should be on the neck of the guitar, both with tablature and with music. So, bearing this in mind, if we take a look at the next bar, bar 5, you can see that the 1st finger should play the 3rd fret. But I'm going to simplify this bar even more by telling you it's just a D7 shape in the 3rd fret. And firstly, you remove the 3rd finger, then you put it down and then remove it again. Simple as that. Here that bar is, just showing the fingering hand. And we start with the D7th in the 3rd fret, but with the 3rd finger removed. Then you place the 3rd finger into place, and then you remove it again. And here's what that sounds like. And here that is again, but this time with a 2-bar introduction, in case you want to try and play along with me. Let's bring that together straight away with the 6th bar, which is just the 1st finger holding down the 5th fret on the top 3 strings, and using the 4th finger to play the 8th fret. So it looks like this. The 1st finger playing the 5th fret of the top 3 strings, the 4th finger playing the 8th fret, and then remove the 4th finger. And here's what that bar sounds like. And here that is again with the 2-bar introduction, so you can try and play along with me. Right, let's bring line 3 together, or bar 5 and 6. And here that is again with a 2-bar introduction at 90 beats per minute, in case you want to try and play along with me. And here that is again one last time, but this time at 100 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. See if you can play along. Right, let's take a look at line 4. Which almost doesn't need any explanation, because it's just using basic chords that you should already know. However, there's one slight thing you need to watch for. If you take a look at the 7th note of the 7th bar, you're actually playing the 3rd fret on the top E string. And you play this using the 4th finger. So here's what the 4th line sounds like at 90 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. Hopefully you can play that straight away, but if not, don't worry, just pause the video here and practice it a few times. Otherwise, here it is being played at 90 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction, so you can try and play along. And here that is again one last time with a 2-bar introduction, but this time at 100 beats per minute. Before we bring the first 4 lines together, I'll just point out the repeats. And you can see there's a repeat sign round the first 4 lines, which means you'd play them twice. And then there's a repeat round the second 4 lines, which means you'd play those twice as well. But for the moment, we'll ignore the repeats. Here then is the first 4 lines being played at 90 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. Try and play along if you think you're ready. And here that is again with a 2-bar introduction at 90 beats per minute. And here that is again one last time, but this time at 100 beats per minute. Right, let's move on to the first line of the second 4 lines. And the first chord is a partial G7, which you leave in place and just add the 4th finger to make it a normal G. And then you remove the 4th finger again, exposing the 1st finger in the 1st fret of the top E string. And this is what that looks and sounds like. And here that is again, in case you want to try playing along with me, but this time with a 2-bar introduction. And we'll go on to the next bar straight away so we can join those together. And the next bar starts out with a normal C major. However, then you roll your first finger across to cover 2 strings, and then you roll it back. Here's what that looks like, just showing the fingering hand. So you start with a C, or a partial C, and then you roll the first finger across to cover both the top E string and the B string. And then you'll roll it back again so that you're playing a normal partial C again. Here's what that looks and sounds like. Right, let's hear that again at the same speed, 90 beats per minute, with a 2-bar introduction, so you can try and play along with me. Right, let's bring that together with the previous bar, so we've got the complete 5th line. And here it is being played at 90 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. So you can try and play along if you think you're ready. And here that is again, in case you want to try and play along. And here that is one last time, but this time at 100 beats per minute. Right, let's move on to the 6th line, which has a bit of an awkward chord in it, and then the easiest chord in the whole tune. In the first bar of line 6, we've got a B7. That can be played in 2 completely different ways. Option 1 is to use the 2nd, 3rd and 4th finger, and then slide the 4th finger up to the 3rd fret on the top E string when you have to, and return it. Or you can use fingers 1, 2 and 3, and use the 4th finger to finger the 3rd fret of the top E string when you have to play that note. My own preferred way of playing this bar is to use the 2nd, 3rd and 4th finger, as if I was playing a complete B7. Here's what both methods look like, just showing the fingering hand. Method 1. We place the 2nd, 3rd and 4th fingers down, and then you'd slide the 4th finger up to the 3rd fret of the top E string, and then return it to the 2nd fret on the top E string. Or you can play method 2, the 1st, 2nd and 3rd finger, using the 4th finger to play the 3rd fret on the top E string, and then just remove it when you have to go back to the original chord shape. I'll be using method 1 because I go quite automatically to a standard B7 shape. Rather than practicing this bar on its own, we'll go on to the next bar and combine the 2, and this is because the next bar is so easy. When you start the bar, you don't have to finger any notes at all, and then you just place the 2nd finger in the 2nd fret of the top E string and remove it again. So here's what those 2 bars sound like at 90 beats per minute. And here that is again, in case you want to try and play along with me. And here that is one last time, but this time at 100 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. Try and play along if you think you're ready. Right, let's take a look at the last two lines, and we'll start with bar 13, which is an F major going to an F add 9 and back to the F major. Now, teaching in the past, I've found that the F major is the least popular chord amongst beginners. However, there's two ways of playing this. You can either play it with a partial bar chord using the first and second finger, or you could use the open chord or half bar. But if you use the half bar or the open F, you'll have to use the 3rd fret on the D string as the bass note. And this is why there's a 3 in brackets in the tablature. Whichever way you choose to play this bar, you'll play the 3rd fret on the top E string with the 4th finger. Here's both options, just looking at the fingering hand. Firstly, the partial bar, moving to the F add 9, and then returning to the partial bar. And the second option, the open F or half bar, whichever you prefer to call it, going through to the F add 9, returning to the F. I'll play the F partial bar as it's how the tune was originally written. So here's what that looks and sounds like. And here that is again with a 2-bar introduction, in case you want to try and play along with me. And here that is again, in case you want to play along with it. Right, let's take a look at the next chord so we can bring this line together. And this bar is very similar to bar 10. In bar 10, if you remember, we played a C chord, but we rolled the first finger across to play the F on the top E string. And you do exactly the same thing in this bar, but you play a G bass instead of the C bass. So here's what that looks and sounds like. And here that is again, but this time with a 2-bar introduction, so you can try and play along with me if you want to. Right, let's bring bars 13 and 14 together and try playing the whole line. Here it is at 90 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. And here that is again with a 2-bar introduction. Try and play along if you think you're ready. Here that is one more time, but slightly faster at 100 beats per minute. Try and play along if you think you can. We'll bring the whole of the last 4 lines together now, because if you take a look at the last line, you'll notice the first bar is identical to bar 3, and the last bar is simply a C major. So here's the last 4 lines being played at 90 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction, and I'll ignore the repeats. Here that is again at 90 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. Try and play along if you think you're ready. Here that is again one last time, but this time at 100 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. Here's the complete tune, but without repeats, at 90 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. Try and play along if you think you're ready. Here that is one last time without the repeats at 100 beats per minute. Try and play along if you think you're ready. As usual, at the end of this video, I've put the metronome beats, but I've also put a backing track at several speeds, so you can have a go with that. It puts an interesting slant on the tune, in case you want to try playing along with it. I really hope you enjoyed this lesson, and if you did, please like it. And if you're not yet subscribed, like, subscribe and hit the bell icon, and then you'll be notified when I upload new lessons. And you can get the tablature for all the lessons in the fingerstyle course completely free at www.ebooks4guitar.com. Thanks again for watching.